Hello, welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you're joining us from. TrustRadius is super excited to be here hosting for you our groundbreaking series, Leaders Tell All Trends and Tech Buying Tips, where we bring industry leaders together to dispel the noise, cut through the clutter, and delve into the core strategies driving success in their companies and careers. In each of the different episodes, we'll bring together a group of seasoned executives to share their insights on the latest trends, active use cases, and optimal tech stacks within their respective industries. Now more than ever, people are looking for advice to deal with the rapid changes in their industry and in technology, and professionals want to connect with their peers to do so. It's with that lens in mind where we're bringing communities together to do just that. To kick off our series, our inaugural session is focused on HR and people ops leaders, and I couldn't be more excited. I'll be your host for today. My name's Jamy, Conrad, and I'm the current VP of People and HR at TrustRadius. I have over 15 years of HR and people ops experience and have been involved in the strategy and decision-making process for HR tech stacks during my entire HR career. In today's conversation, we'll explore the seismic shifts in HR post-Great Resignation and amidst the rise of Gen AI. This episode of Leaders Tell All, Trends and Tech Buying Tips will unravel the strategies employed by HR professionals to navigate a technology-driven world while still putting people first. Thanks for joining us today as we explore navigating HR evolution in the age of AI. With that, I'd like to turn our attention over to our panelists and welcome them to the conversation. Hello, Amanda, Lauren. So happy that you're here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to be here.
I'm super excited.
I speak for the we.
Yeah. I'm super excited to have you two ladies here with us today. In true TrustRadius fashion, one of the things in our cultures, we tend to celebrate some of the random National Day of Themes or World Day of Themes. Today, May 7th, is National Tourism Day. So why don't each of you introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit more about you, your history and background in HR, and maybe somewhere that you've traveled recently or that you'd like to travel in the near future. And I'd love to encourage everybody to also participate by putting their responses in the comment section. Lauren, why don't we start with you?
Awesome. I would be happy to start. So I am the VP of People at Sanity.io. Previously, I was at Medium for 4.5 years, leading people efforts and recruiting efforts. And I've also spent time at Facebook and Instagram and Refinery29, agency side, et cetera. As far as travel plans, last week I was in sunny Florida for the Troop HR retreat along with you, Jamy. Shout out to Troop HR. Next week, I'm going to San Francisco. And then in a few weeks, I'm going to be traveling to Norway for the first time, which I'm very, very excited about. Lots of travel happening, making up for the last 4 years of really not traveling at all.
Wonderful. Awesome. Amanda?
I'm Amanda. I've been in the HR people world for about 18 years. I've had the privilege of building, operating, consulting, and advising a wide range of companies. Had the privilege of working with Lauren at Medium for a period of time. And in 2021, I founded Mindful Growth Partners, which is an HR consultancy that specializes in fractional HR leadership, HR and business advisory, and a new area of focus that I'm really passionate about, AI speaking and education. I would say that my background is most heavily in HR, but I also spent some time working in product partnerships for an HR tech company where I spent a lot of time understanding the data landscape. And when ChatGPT came on the scene in November 2022, I just went headfirst into learning for my own, personal journey. And since then have been really committed to demystifying a lot of what seems to be complex around AI for the HR community. And I share my insights and regular updates on LinkedIn. And I started a newsletter back in November called Unraveling AI, where the goal is really to share practical applications of AI in everyday life, and with the goal of bridging the gap between AI's potential and its integration into HR practices, trying to remove some of the complexity, and have been fortunate to feature amazing people like Jamy and Lauren. So excited to be on this panel with you too. Oh, travel. I am in the home buying process, and so it's been a little bit dry on the travel side. But I did get to go to Madeira back in September of last year, which is a Portuguese island off the coast of Africa, and it was out of this world. Highly recommend. They call it the Hawaii of Europe, and just like these like breathtaking cliffs, and it was so peaceful and quiet. My partner says that if he ever goes missing, that's where he will be.
That's where we'll find him.
Now everyone knows.
Right.
Everyone here.
Send the search party directly to, you know exactly where you're at. That's awesome. I appreciate you guys sharing, and would love to see the comments as well. In support of our theme for today and AI, of course, Gen AI and HR tech, I asked ChatGPT to help me in navigating this conversation today. So let's get started, and we'll see how well ChatGPT gets us through this conversation. Our profession has undergone a lot in the last 4 years. We've been through and asked to lead through a lot of different things, including the global pandemic, war overseas, SVB bank drop, and many other social unrest activities within our community. With all of that going on, we've also had several breakthroughs as a profession. I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think is the most significant breakthrough that we've had in the last 4 years as a profession, HR profession as a whole? Amanda, do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, we are not just HR and people pros anymore. We have been asked to play so many new and incredibly pivotal roles, to all the things you mentioned, Jamy. It's like, we've been asked to sit at the table and, be the one leading the conversation on, going remote, on return to office, on, dealing with unrest, dealing with, global wars. And that requires a different level of expertise and a different level of adaptation. We have to be partners to CEOs and business leaders across companies, navigating all of this. And I think the reality is that we went through all of these things, and we haven't even taken much time to, to reflect or decompress or give ourselves a moment to breathe. The markets have changed, and with all of that, we are just constantly in this adaptation mode, and pivoting into different roles. I would say that's, to me, seems like the biggest, breakthrough is just being everything to everyone in many instances.
For sure. Sapient Insight Group, they put out their annual report last fall. And, it was the first time that HR had hit the 50% mark for being seen by CEOs as a strategic partner. So huge, milestone, only halfway. And it's because of all of these wonderful opportunities we've had recently to show up for our organizations. Lauren, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I'm totally aligned to that. I think, like Amanda said, we're not just HR pros anymore. We're not sort of behind the scenes or like just operational anymore. I sort of think of us as culture translators, if you will. Especially in the last 4 years, we've found ourselves in a position where we are looked to help business leaders understand how we can show up for our employees, how we can meet the needs of our employees. And those needs are very, very different than they were, even, 5 to 10 years ago or whatnot, right? Why is it important to be able to speak about world happenings at work? Why is it important for our companies to say, hey, we realize this thing is going on in the world, take the time that you need, or, go for a walk outside, get off Zoom, et cetera? Why is it important for us to do those things now when they really weren't as prominent before? I think that it completely shifted the way that people teams, HR teams viewed their work, because we shifted into, more entire employee experience related, or even like crisis comms, right? Like, how are we sort of showing up for our people? How are we talking about all of these things that are deeply affecting our employees? And, what benefits do we need to provide for our employees to sort of meet those very different needs? So it's been interesting in my time. That's really when I came up as a people leader instead of just a recruiting leader. And so it's really just opened my eyes to a completely different way of working.
Yeah, I love that. Culture translators is so accurate to so many of the different aspects we get asked to be involved in and lead through. And I think, a lot of that has helped to elevate our voices and reach higher levels of influence within organizations. It's a great trend for our profession, for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
When I think about some of these significant milestones and breakthroughs that we've had, I can't help but think that technology and changes in technology has also been a part of what's helped us get there. From you guys' perspective, what part did changes in technology play in where we're at now? Amanda, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I can start. I think that when work was, forced to be remote, and now is some combination of really, fully distributed, semi-distributed, non-distributed. This means that like all of the in real life moments that existed in the past are either existing very less frequently or not at all. And we have to make up for that, and we have to make anything that is or was implicit explicit. And I think that technology can really enable a lot of this asynchronous work. And I would say that, like, any tools that are helping us to stay connected with each other, right, while we are remote or distributed, tools that are helping to share context across organizations, tools that are helping to align us around our roles and responsibilities and goals. I would say that, like, those are really the big breakthroughs that I think that I'm seeing. It's like, how are we making things that were once clear in person in office, clear in this new way of working in this new world.
Community is so important as we've gone through some of these transitions and changes. It's been a big part of what's led to some of the conversations we've been able to be involved in. Lauren, how about you? Do you have a perspective on this one?
Yeah, I think, in that same vein, especially in the moment where we were all going remote, we could no longer rely on, sort of gathering in the office and, meeting at the water cooler and things like that, or having an in-person after work happy hour, or having lunch, lunch together every day. We couldn't rely on those sort of in-person aspects that really, a lot of companies relied on those things to build culture or to fuel culture, et cetera. We had to think of how we think about culture. That completely changed when it comes to how we communicate, right? Like Amanda was saying, we're not relying on once a week in person, all hands together, where we're all on the same page together. We have people joining from all over the place. You're no longer relying on body language, right? How is this message actually being received in this very, very different way? And so I think, while technology allowed us to get really flexible with where people were working from, we still were leaning very heavily into how is this actually impacting us? How is this impacting our culture? And I think that there's a lot of us that are still trying to figure that out, right? But I do especially appreciate the world it's sort of opened up for us.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are still trying to figure that out. One of the things that I hear, I'm involved in several different HR communities, and one of the most common things I hear every time I go into a community is How do I know which is the right technology? Does anybody have recommendations on HRIS or payroll systems or employee engagement systems? And, is anybody willing to jump on a call about this tech that I'm evaluating right now? If you could break it down into some actionable steps, when you think about going through the technology buying process, what are some of those things that come top of mind for you? How do you even know where to begin in that? Do you guys also start with forums and give me your recommendations? Lauren, you want to start?
Sure, I can. Yeah. And there are like so many tools to choose from, right? Especially over the last 4 years, so many new fantastic tools popped up. Some of them do all the same thing, et cetera, right? And so you really want to be thoughtful about what tools you're adding to your toolbox, and do they make sense for you? And so first of all, I usually start with, what do we have in place already? Are we using it to its full capacity, or are we only using it about like 50% of the way or 75% of the way? Have we really tapped into this specific tool's full potential? And if there's something missing from it, what are we solving for? Are we solving in a way that like needs to completely replace a tool, or do we just need to supplement a tool? Then, after figuring those things out, it's really about, how do all of our tools talk to each other and integrate with each other? Is there one fantastic tool out there that will do it all for us, or do we have to sort of build the right solution and right tech stack for us? Those are the most immediate things that I think about, right? And then I'm also layering on top of that, what does cost look like for that one specific tool? And then all together, what is our tech stack actually costing us? And are we being cost effective in that way? How secure is the tool, right? We'll have our security team do a sweep of it and make sure that it's serving our needs in those ways. And then I also think about not over-engineering our processes at work. I work at a startup right now. I've mainly worked in startups. And so that means that our work usually starts off as very manual. And sometimes I think that's okay. Sometimes I think parts of the process could remain manual, right? And so I also look at the entire process to understand, what do we want to automate? What could save us a lot of time and effort? But also, where do we want to keep a very human touch to whatever it is we're doing? And then I like sort of measure that against the tool to make sure that it will serve our specific purpose.
You absolutely can't get away from the ROI aspect for sure. But that people-centricity is really important. Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, huge +1 to everything you said, Lauren. I think, like, to Odette commented, but every company is so different. Every situation is different. We're in a different world. I think there is no, this tool is the right tool for every startup, or this tool is the right tool for every enterprise company. I think, taking a little bit of a step back, but I would say that I approach these situations from a human-centered design perspective. I know, Lauren, you talked about this too, but even before getting to the technology itself, it's kind of our role and responsibility to have our finger on the pulse with people, and to really understand and discover where the pain points are, where the challenges are. And we're all doing that all the time through one-on-ones and focus groups and engagement surveys and team meetings. But I think that discovery is our job all the time. And so once we are able to identify some of those like challenges, those problem areas, we can start to kind of ideate and brainstorm and think about what might be solutions. And some of those solutions might look like tools. Some of those solutions might look like more manual processes. And then I think it's then that you can prototype and test. But it's like the identification of that problem is so important in the beginning, because if you don't know what your actual problem is, you more than likely are going to select a tool that has lots of bells and whistles, but to kind of Tim's point and your point, Lauren, you're not utilizing it, right? You maybe use one piece of it. And so I think that I think about the technology world too, in the shifts that we've seen right from this like integrated solutions to point solutions, and there are individuals who are, more prone to picking the best in class point solutions. And then there are others who feel like, I would rather have a well integrated all in one tool. So there's a lot of like preference and pieces that are so specific to the individual and to the company when you're looking at this process.
Yeah, for sure. But we decided ahead of this series to poll our LinkedIn community. And when we talk about, vendors and vendor selection, want to transition us into the AI part of the conversation. Our LinkedIn community, we asked them, with all the technology that's coming out every single day and available for us to choose from, leading up to this LinkedIn Live series, are you more likely to purchase a product that is more well-established from a more well-established vendor, or a newer brand that has AI capabilities? And the results were fairly split. Last time I checked, last night, it was 57% indicating they'd go with a more well-established product versus 43% with a newer brand that had AI capabilities. Which way do you guys lean on your personal preference, Lauren?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I could kind of go either way. I think that it really depends on what the tool can do for me and my team, like how it will power us. And I often tap into my networks, with which both of you are a part of, but I often tap into my network to get perspective on who's used the tool before, what they love about it, et cetera. Somebody, I think, left a comment about Anthony left a comment about acting like a scientist and experimenting. And my team will tell you that I think of all things as an experiment. And so I lean towards tools that will allow us to experiment with them a little bit, to really see and understand how they work, again, how they can power our teams, and ultimately like what will work best for us in the long run. I think, the benefit of working with a more well-established brand is there are probably more people that have used it that can give you real feedback of having been in the tool, right? But the benefit of using a newer tool is also that oftentimes those types of companies are more able to really take and hear your feedback that will then maybe help influence their roadmap of what they're building along the way, right? And so I think that there's a lot of benefit in working with smaller startups or newer tools, if you're okay with it being a sort of like a work in progress along the way, because then you might be able to sort of help shape what that becomes and what that looks like. I do, as a startup person myself, I really do love being able to work closely with a new tool or a new platform to really understand how it can get even better from the point that I'm using it at.
I was going to say, I would say both also. I think that, the lowest hanging fruit for so many of us is using the AI capabilities that are within the well-established products that we have and are using on a regular basis. And so I definitely think that it's important that we do leverage those, because we already have them, right? So like Notion AI or Google's AI tools, all of these are there and available, and they are well established products. But when you look at some of the emerging tools and the startups, there's a lot of weight to these use case specific tools that are really being trained on best practices. Hopefully, you want to have these conversations with the vendors, but that are more honed in on specific use cases that are using equitable practices and are trained on data that is more specific to the problem set that we're trying to solve for. So there's, I think there's validity and importance in both, for sure.
Yeah, one of the pieces of feedback I got from our community in asking this poll question was, when exploring technology, tech buyers seeing AI solutions, regardless of if they're coming from more well-established products or AI incumbents, are they capable of performing the relevant outcomes and data that we're looking to investigate, right? And so going back to you, Lauren, and like the solutioning aspect, is it solving for the problems that we're wanting to see? And then we had another LinkedIn member say that we should be asking about technology solutions that are AI native rather than AI incorporated into older platforms. And so I thought that was really good perspective from some of our readers and listeners on how they're thinking about AI and approaching AI in the conversations. Do either of you have perspective for that you'd like to expand on?
This is the specifically on the, sorry, I just had a mental blank.
That's okay. That's okay.
On AI native rather than AI incorporated into older platforms.
Yeah. I think that it's always, this is where you want to get into asking as many questions as you can of the vendors to understand, right? Like what LLMs are they tapped into? How are they training the data? Again, like what is the use case for this tool? I think that this is where you want to get as curious as possible with the vendor and really get in there and ask the questions and make sure you feel comfortable and confident that they are they're sharing and they are open and transparent with their responses.
Yeah, when I think about incorporating AI into the people metrics and people data, I tend to look at it from the lens of like traditional HR and compliance versus more of the progressive people community aspects. For the more traditional and compliance, I'm going to want those vendors that have been around for a long time, that they've got all the security practices in place, because I do not want a breach of my employee data, right?
Yeah,
I don't want
totally.
social security numbers and dates of birth just floating out there because we didn't see and understand everything that AI may be bringing into the technology that we're talking about using. But I also feel like on that more progressive people side, we've not done a really good job of solving some of these things when it comes to community. And so I'd love to be part of the journey with some of these emerging AI technologies about how do we solve for that and what does that look like and how can we lean into our core values, how can we represent our core values through the tech stack that we're choosing.
Yeah. And how do they get more involved in having the conversations with the community? Because I think you're right. I think a lot of these tools and technologies have been built, maybe not with us as the main user, right? And so that probably creates some of the kind of hesitancy and resistance around HR leaders and technology, which I think is something that is real and is there.
And this just in from our marketing team and working diligently in the background, the newest, most relevant right now stats on that poll: 61% lean into well-established products, 39% leaning into newer brands with AI capabilities. So thank you, marketing team, TrustRadius, for keeping me on my toes. Want to move into the Gen AI aspect within our profession, not just technology, but as a whole. Amanda, I know you mentioned earlier about your Unraveling AI newsletter that you put out, and I know you do a really good job of getting leaders from lots of different industries and perspectives to weigh in with their thoughts. Where are you seeing Gen AI have the biggest impact on our profession as a whole?
Yeah, I would say that we are really more so than ever before being asked to do more with less. And that means that we have to be really smart about how we use our time. And so I think that creates an incredible opportunity for so many of the generative AI tools that exist out there. And so, when you're thinking about a task, right? Should I be doing this or should I be using an AI assistant to help with this. I think there's three key areas that I think about and that seem to come through from a lot of the responses in the newsletter, which are summarizing, synthesizing, and creating content. And I think that those are kind of three of the big buckets of work that generative AI can help us do. And so, summarizing being meeting notes, interview notes, right? There's a lot of generative AI tools that are out there to help support with that. So if you're an HR team of one, right, or you've lost your talent team and you're down to one person, right? There's a lot of supplemental tools that you can use to help synthesizing, things like employee engagement data, 360 reviews, performance reviews. We don't have to sit there and sift through pages and pages of notes anymore. And I think that's a huge benefit and a huge time saver. And then I think creating content, right? Like there's, you want to be weary, you don't want to take the first draft, but there's lots of ways that you can use generative AI to start a policy for you. I don't go at any of these things on my own and get a pen to paper anymore. I will get some kind of draft, or I will have my notes and have an assistant take those notes and put them into a draft policy. So I think about it in those three areas, but I think the ultimate kind of theme is like doing more with less, and we have to think about our time more preciously.
Yeah, agreed. Do more with less is the theme of work all the way around in 2024, I think, HR and otherwise.
Yeah.
Lauren Stern put out an article last month indicating that among organizations that have adopted AI for HR purposes, talent acquisition and recruiting is the top area for its use at a 64% adoption rate. I think you and your team, you had mentioned that you had gone through some of these changes on your talent acquisition team and maybe have adopted some Gen AI tools in your talent acquisition process. Are you willing to share about what some of those things were? I'd love to share with the audience an actual use case.
For sure. Yeah. And I feel very lucky to be part of an organization that is very AI curious. We are encouraged to seek out new tools that can support us in our work and whatnot. And, for us as a people team, that's super important as well. We're sort of just dipping our toes into how we can be supported in those ways. And as you said, our talent team especially has been able to find a really fantastic tool to help with recruiting notes. We only are using this at the recruiting screen stage. We have not implemented this across our entire interview process, but we've been sort of testing it for the last few months at the recruiting screen stage, and it's been wildly helpful. We have a small recruiting team at our company, and I myself was a recruiter for many, many years. And so I know how intense it can be to, do so many screens per week. And you have to either, sometimes you're going from call to call, back to back, or sometimes you have to schedule, 10 minutes in between to get your notes down and whatnot. Sometimes you are worried about not being fully present in the conversation that you're having with the candidate because you're so busy furiously taking down notes and everything like that. And so the tool that we use integrates into Zoom and captures very detailed, super accurate notes from the entire call. So it's helping us to capture everything from like housekeeping questions to capturing the questions that we are asking and what this person is responding with, so that the team doesn't have to, they can take those notes. You're sent a sort of summary and an exact transcript after your call, and you can go in and sort of fill in any blanks or fill in any other context you want to fill in. But it saves the team so much time when it comes to those initial screens as well. And then we're taking that information and putting it into our actual ATS system. There's not a seamless way to get those notes into the ATS system just yet. Hopefully that comes down the line so that it's automatic. But I know that our team has saved a ton of time and energy in having a tool that is able to capture those sort of notes. We use a different tool throughout our entire organization that's capturing things like meeting notes for us. And that is also super, super helpful to get get just, instead of tapping on one person to be the note taker in a meeting, we're all getting, this tool is doing it for us. We're capturing all of the to-dos, et cetera. Those are two tools that I think are fantastic.
When you were evaluating technology and you made a decision, right, there comes that point where you're making the final decision. Was there anything, one or two things that made you have confidence in those specific AI technologies that helped them stand out amongst others?
Yeah, we first, and just for some context, first we tried to use this note-taking tool that we use across the entire company. And it was fine, but it wasn't specific to recruiting. And so it just sort of gave you a transcript and didn't really break out the conversation by question and response, et cetera, right? And so we wanted to try this new tool that was built with recruiting in mind. And that just worked so much better for us. It structures the notes and summary that you get back from it into more of an interview style sort of summary, which I think is really helpful and is like a small change, but just makes so much more sense for us, right? Our team tested the recruiting tool for a few weeks. And then I said, go out into the world, test it, and come back to me with your experience of the tool. And if this is something that we want to invest in longer term, then let's go for it. And so they did. They tested it with a few calls, maybe 10 calls each, and really did a thorough evaluation of what was great about it, what needed some work, et cetera. And ultimately, it just made such a difference to their way of working and their workload that it was sort of a no-brainer for us to invest in it. And so that's great. We did evaluate things like, is this a secure platform for us? How does this integrate into the rest of our tools? Does it integrate into the rest of our tools? What is the actual cost of it? Does it seem like the cost of this is adding to this value, or does it maybe it doesn't make sense or something like that? But it really did check all of the boxes. And so we were happy to move forward with it and have been super, super satisfied.
I want to dig into a little bit about the policies and the best practices around the security, since it's come up a couple of times. There's no doubt that there's no real court cases yet for us to lean into on how this is all going to play out going forward. So when you're thinking about risk tolerance and adoption of technology and AI in your organizations, what are you hearing about, and how are you applying AR policies in the workplace? Do you have one? Do you currently have policy in place around AI usage or guidelines? How are you approaching that with the organizations you're supporting?
I can start. I think that there's not a lot when it comes to policies in place. I did a LinkedIn poll. This was a couple months back, but it asking, do you have a policy in place? Are you thinking about a policy, or do you have nothing in place? 60% had nothing in place. 20% were thinking about it, and 20% had something in place. I think that does feel fairly representative from the conversations that I have on a regular basis with leaders. I will say, I support a software engineering firm, and given that they are heavily in the tech space, right, they have a lot of thoughts and have put a lot of time and energy into thinking about AI policy and strategy. But it's gone through many iterations, right? And it actually isn't quite yet a formal policy. So I think that there's that. In many cases, we're in that space where we're thinking about it, but we might not have something formal in place. And in those scenarios, I think it's more important than ever to really be in partnership with the leaders across the org, from your IT to your security folks. If you don't have those people in place, your CTO, your CEO, your COO, to make sure that you are, being smart and safe about the way you're thinking, and assessing tools and bringing those tools in place. But I think it's very, like, we have to all continue to remain curious, but I think at the same time also be thinking about what guidelines and structures and principles we want to put in place around how we think about and support AI in our companies.
I know when we were drafting policy and guidelines at TrustRadius, it was such a dance for us, right? We wanted to make sure that we were protecting people data and our organization, our product line, and without stifling the creativity of people using Gen AI for different use cases, right? And so there's that fine line there about, how much is too much from a policy standpoint, and still allowing for that creativity to come through for the adoption of Gen AI as we figure out ways to help improve productivity and user experience and all of those types of things. Lauren, have you guys started to tackle this where you're at?
Yeah, we don't have any formal policies in place just yet. I think we're taking more of a best practices approach where we are reminding folks of best practices when using these tools. As I said before, our organization is very curious about how AI tools can power our work. And so you have different pockets of the organization that are using different AI tools in different ways, right? So it's just reminding people that when you are implementing a new tool, have our security team do a sweep of it. When you are, adding a note taker to your Zoom calls, get consent from people. Make sure that they know that this AI note taker is in the room and recording. Ask if people are comfortable with being recorded, et cetera. That's something that the recruiting tool that I mentioned before an interview, we're sending a note to candidates saying that, hey, this is the tool that we use. It will be in the room. If you'd like to opt out, feel free to opt out, and sort of giving people both a heads up and a choice in how they are also engaging with whatever tools we're implementing, right? And then, if it's a tool that is not joining a Zoom room or anything like that, just being mindful of what that tool does, where that information is stored, where it's sent to, who has access to it, et cetera. And so really just formulating a list of best practices around these tools is the approach that we're taking so far.
And I think it kind of goes to the principles piece. And Nadia, you asked a question about, experience bringing internal tech leadership or legal other stakeholders into the conversation. And I think that starts with what is the goal? What is our goal with AI? And what are we hoping to achieve with AI as an organization? And that should really help to inform and shape how you have these conversations, how you, set up best practices, right? Because I think, in New York, it's like a one consent, actually, right? And so only one person has to consent. So you don't have to tell people that you're recording, which I think is fascinating. But it is important to have and set those principles and perspectives on AI as an organization, so you can, decide your path moving forward.
I know it's hard to believe we're coming up on quarter to the hour. We do intend to take a couple of questions coming in from the comments section. So if you have a question, want to definitely encourage you to get that added. I'm going to ask one more question to the panelists, and then we'll dive into Q&A. Would love to hear from you guys. There's a lot of technology out there. Do you have a favorite emerging AI technology that you want to give a shout out to right now?
Oh gosh, I think it's interesting. I'm going to share an example first, but I think that AI with a lot of the flashy bells and whistles often isn't the answer. I was reading about the Rabbit R1 AI gadget. This is like that. If you don't know what it is, it's this small walkie-talkie like device that's meant to, it's a way to action apps on your iPhone. So you talk to it, and so you could say, Venmo mom $15. Apparently, it was released, and there are only 4 apps that currently work, and the reports say that those apps aren't even really working well. So I think that, back to the question, making sure that you are really like testing and trying a lot of different tools. There are a couple, right? I think, back to the point of like thinking about, how am I using this in the flow of my work, right? I use ChatGPT all the time. I've started to use Claude more. I think that the outputs from these are changing constantly, and so one will score better than the other, and this changes rapidly. And so I think it's important to be testing different tools. I also use a tool called EQ Buddy, which is in the recruitment space, but it's really essentially like a recruitment specific AI co-pilot. But it's been really built and trained on best practices and equitable practices in the recruitment space. And so it helps with, candidate sourcing and pulling market research for comp. I think it's saved hours from a recruitment perspective for me. So those are a couple.
Lauren, do you have a favorite you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I mean, +1 to EQ Buddy. It's such a powerful tool when it comes to what you can do with it as a recruiting team, especially like breaking into new markets or anything like that. The tool that we're using that I've kept referring to is called MetaView, and it's a recruiting note taker. And again, just the quality of the notes that you receive from that platform and the way that it's structured. Again, like I've spent much of my career as a recruiter, and I wish I had that tool, especially back when I was doing like very high volume of recruiting at Facebook and Instagram and whatnot. It just can save like hours worth of your time when it comes to note taking in that way. That's probably like the one that sticks out the most for me. I try to dabble a little bit here and there in other tools like ChatGPT and the native AI tools that are in Notion and Google. But to me, that recruiting tool really sticks out the most for me.
I'll add one more. Canva is amazing, and I use it all the time. And I love the AI functionality in Canva. So,
and you can have it for teams now, so you can collaborate with others directly within the platform, which is pretty cool.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. All right, let's take a couple questions from the audience. Tim asks, do you see the future of AI enabling teams to build more in-house applications versus vendor-built systems? Future of AI enabling teams to build more in-house applications versus vendor-built systems. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a great question. I think that there's, if we go back to my point of, are we doing more with less? I think about teams and how resource constraint many of them are, and also how at the same time the budgets are also shrinking. So you kind of have this catch-22. But I think that there's the amount, just the sheer volume of AI platforms out there really does lend itself to, and with teams shrinking like they are, lends itself to people, in my opinion, going more towards the vendor side. But I will also say that we are all our own unique instances in so many cases, and if we have the capacity and the resources and the budget to build these tools on our own, I think that those can be more powerful than any tool that you're going to buy off the shelf, because your problem, your use case, your users. And so
yeah,
I see both.
Agree. It reminds me of my time at Facebook and Instagram, and obviously it was a while ago because I'm still calling it Facebook and not Meta. But there was a sort of homegrown ATS system that they were using instead of using a vendor ATS system. And so I think some companies that do have the resources to dedicate to doing that, then yes, they might do that. They may use AI to help power that. But otherwise, I think, especially as a startup people leader myself, I think just like the ease of use and not needing to think about how many other resources I might have to get to swarm on this thing, I would bet that we would stick with tapping into vendors, at least for now, right? Because these things are still emerging. There's so many tools out there that we can easily tap into. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think it goes towards data, right? Data is the underpinning of all of this. And depending on how sophisticated your organization is going to determine whether you have the right data and infrastructure and all of that to be able to even be at a place to begin to build your own tools.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that the progress we've made over the last 5 years in people analytics in general has helped to move us more into those strategic conversations. So, how well we keep our data and what we focus in on can be a game changer across the board. Next question from the audience from Mara. Curious to hear about how AI might be best used for learning, training, and development. So when we think about L&D and training, do you guys have thoughts on how AI could be best used for that? Lauren, do you want to start?
I could start. I'm not sure. I haven't. I haven't used any tools specifically for that. So I don't have many like real world examples of how I think this would how it could help. But I do think about when it comes to learning and development, performance management, et cetera. What are the biggest lifts for our team? It is often around planning and launching a performance review cycle, making sure that your management cohort is all is aligned and prepared for taking their teams through that sort of session. It's things like building and implementing growth frameworks and competencies and how we're implementing those for the first time. It is thinking about calibrations. How are we calibrating across entire company when it comes to the development of our organization, when it comes to the performance of our organization? I would love to tap into tools and resources that could really help that lift for our team. A lot of that stuff is still quite manual, where we're building out dashboards that, we're able to sort of use. Some of the tools that we're using right now have elements of AI in them, but they aren't solving for that like very specific use case of that like is meaningful to our company, right? It's a built-in thing that you can tap into within the tool, but there are still a lot of things that feel like they're missing for us. So then we opt to build it on our own. But I think about like, what are the heaviest lifts for us in those categories with small teams, and how we could change those for the better. But again, my experience and my opinion is a bit limited because we haven't been able to find or test like a great solution for us to solve those things yet.
Yeah, I think it's like, go ahead, Jamy.
I was just saying, there are some really cool emerging AI technologies around personalized career pathing for professional development and skill building, AI coaching to make it really personalized to specific skills that person may need, rather than a full-blown like L&D program. And so I would definitely encourage to look into some of those more emerging AI technologies for Mara. Amanda, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like tools that support manager development and manager coaching, right? I think, Textio has some tools that help to kind of coach individuals from a manager perspective. And it's been trained on, removing bias, right? Because I think that there is a lot of conversation around, curiosity and using the tools, right? And going to ChatGPT. But I think, when you look at some of the stats around like using it for feedback or, performance reviews, it is heavily biased based on all of the data that it is made up of. So I think that it's important to make sure you're using the right tools for these types of situations. But I will say from a, creating training perspective, I had to lead a session yesterday that was fairly last minute with folks who are leading pods. And so it's based on like facilitation best practices, tips, and tools. And I used ChatGPT I said, hey, this is for a group of engineering leaders, and I have 30 minutes, and this is the framework of the conversations that they're going to be having with their pods. Help me think about how I can use my 30 minutes with them. And I had my own set of kind of tips and tools and tricks and best practices, but like it was a great supplement to that. So I think there's a lot we can do with things like ChatGPT and Claude.
Well, I know we're getting close to time, so let's wrap this conversation. Want to end with just each of us sharing final thoughts or resources for our audience members that they could check out. Lauren, do you want to start?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I'm going to tap into Amanda. Amanda's resources, Amanda as a resource, I think is fantastic for people leaders. The newsletter that she puts out weekly has been tremendously useful for me in understanding what tools are out there. How can I tap into them? How can I talk to ChatGPT to like ask questions that will give me meaningful stuff back? So I think finding a network of people especially that are also curious about how AI can empower our work is really, really important. Remaining curious yourself is also super, super important as well. But I think just tapping into networks like Amanda has created, I think has been ideal on my end. Also, relying on your team, asking your team members, asking your communities what tools they have found most powerful, and testing them out, doing a demo of the tool, doing a test of it, I think can be super helpful in understanding how you can actually infuse AI into what you're doing or what your team is doing, just being curious and experimenting in that way.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Lauren. That was very kind of you. I would say, I think that kind of on that theme, remaining curious and trying to understand more of what is out there, right? Sign up for some newsletters, AI newsletters, attend different events, sign up for a vendor demo and ask like as many questions as you can. Put time on your calendar to practice and play, right, with a tool. I think that's the best way, is to actually get in there and start practicing, because it isn't something where you're going to put in a prompt and you're going to get the right response the first time. You have to continuously test and learn. That's the process of getting to the right solution. So stay curious.
Curious. Very good. Theme for today. From my perspective, making changes to your HR tech stack is challenging, and it's worth the time up front to strategize your business needs, your personal internal preferences, your desired outcomes before making your tech buying decisions. Word of mouth referrals are good resources, and if you're ever in doubt, come check us out at TrustRadius. Join us next time back here on LinkedIn Live for our next session of Leaders Tell All. We're inviting revenue leaders to join the amazing Katie Pariseau, our beloved Director of Sales Enablement at TrustRadius, to discuss the evolution of modern sales techniques and tech stack to meet buyers where they are. Lauren, thank you. Appreciate you being here. Amanda, same to you. I'm definitely following you guys on LinkedIn. If people want to connect with you, is LinkedIn the best place to go, or do you have a personal preference there?
LinkedIn's great.
LinkedIn is perfect. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Thanks for being part of our inaugural session today and helping us to pave the way for future conversations. Appreciate you sharing your best practices and perspectives today. Thanks, everybody that joined us today. Have a great day, everybody.